Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ari Darami and here to present some of the exciting stories we've got. Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ari. Glad to be here.
Thank you. And to our viewers, old and new, just explain it. It won't take long. It's a simple show. 10 big stories from the week. And we kick them around, and just a word of warning, as usual, we spend a bit more on some stories than we do on others. So if you see us going deep into a particular subject, don't panic. Hey, okay? And so we hear from President Barrow, who says he's aiming to create 150,000 jobs in 5 years. We look at World Remembrance Day for road traffic accident victims. And we hear from a UN rep who says that with Gambia's resources, we don't need food aid or any other kind of aid, or we shouldn't. And we go abroad for a tragic story, a Gambian mother and 2 children who were killed in an apparent arson attack in Nottinghamshire in England. And so those stories and lots more. So first one, as I mentioned at the top there, President Barrow is on his constitutionally mandated Meet the People tour. And at one of the stops, he made quite a bold statement about the number of jobs he and his government would like to create in about 5 years. Have a look, have a listen.
It's very important because when people are trained and people are skillful, you empower them, you create jobs for them. I think it's important, and this is part of our government policy. And our next policy is to create about 150,000 jobs. So it is very important to us, and I think it's a big responsibility. I think it's encouraging because the Tech-Fi project is already finished, but government have adopted a new policy, 2022-2026 employment policy, and we want to create 150,000 jobs.
Now you heard the president there. Now, Mr. Mboj, I was one of those who used to say, what happens after Tech-Fi? Where do we go next? We have this huge youth bulge, unemployed, and we heard the president there. Quite a bold statement, 150,000 jobs.
Absolutely. And he calls it government policy. Maybe I'll probably call it a target. The policy is a much wider framework.
Indeed,
which
yes.
tells us how
Yes.
and all the rest of it.
Plan also, 2026, yes.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he can make any statement he wants. For us, what we are concerned with here is the how.
Yeah, indeed.
The how.
Sure.
In what sectors?
Yeah.
What levels?
That's right.
As it were. So the details we have to really.
Well, this is it, because the president and his various ministers, cabinet ministers, have been going around, and he himself mentioned in a longer piece at that same event, he mentioned the focus that they're putting on TVET, vocational training and skills. And he mentioned there about skills, that if people have the skills, they're more employable. And of course, if you have the skills and you're an entrepreneur, you can start your own business. So they're kind of pushing that sort of narrative, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. You push it, but you also have to do other things as well. What's the quality of this TVET education? Sure. This is training, that sort of thing. So they have to walk around, as we normally say here. The solutions are often multidimensional, aren't they?
Indeed.
I do so many things simultaneously sometimes. You know what I mean? It's really very, very difficult.
Right.
Otherwise, these things will sort of appear to be like just showy, going to have the desired impact.
Yes.
It's not a matter of doing one thing
Sure.
and getting all the publicity around it. If you do not do other stuff as well, you are not going to see the outcomes you want.
Well, this is it. And you mentioned there at the start, it would be good if there had been a target. So what would have been nice to hear? It's 5 years. So in the first year, how many jobs do you hope to create? In the second, third, fourth, and fifth? That would have been nice, and then we could say, okay, you've got these targets that you've announced. Let's measure them. Let's monitor them and see whether they're doable.
And it's interesting where he's decided to announce it.
Indeed.
Meet the people
Meet the
tour.
people tour. This is it.
There will be no questions there. Nobody will ask.
Well, this is it. I mean, because really, what you tend to get is that on these tours, the questions that you tend to get, as people have seen if they've been watching the news, is that can we have better roads? Can we have a better market? Can we have electricity? That sort of thing, rather than dig or scratch at the detail of something like what is quite a major announcement.
That's it, and let's be honest, Adil, for the past few years that he's been doing it, it's just the same thing, isn't it? We want better this, we want better that, and all the rest of it.
Right.
I think originally, during the First Republic, it used to be called Meet the Farmers.
Meet the Farmers. In fact, I was going to announce it as Meet the Farmers and say, don't worry, I haven't made a mistake. But yes, just
That's
to make
it.
that point,
Meet
you're
the
right.
Farmers store.
Yes.
And I'm not even sure whether that was constitutionally mandated. I'm not even sure. I think it was just a convention.
Yes,
that
well,
the
it's
first
certainly in the
president-
97 convention,
absolutely. Then
the
it
constitution, I
changed,
beg your pardon.
became,
Yes.
it's sort of mandated, you know, I might be wrong,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure about that. Then afterwards it morphed into this,
Yes.
now what we call a Meet the People tour. And my question is, what's the purpose? Is it to, well, for people to tell you their issues? You think you don't know them? You know what I mean? Now, that's really my point. And what am I to assess?
Yes.
How am I to assess whether it was a success
our
or
colleague
not?
Choi said
Yes.
something when I spoke to him on the phone, because he's accompanying the tour.
Yes.
And he was saying that the president said at one of the meetings that you can sit in the office as president and you can get all the reports you want. There is a piece of paper. And you don't know how filtered these reports have been before they get to you. So what he wanted was the kind of unfiltered. He wants people to tell him about their pain, their expectations, and so on, face to face. Yes, he will make, you know, speeches, but apparently, and you know, this is Choi saying, he's been doing more listening than talking, which I found quite interesting. So he's allowed people to come out with their grievances, with their hopes, their ambitions, and their aims for their community, and so on. And he's been doing quite a lot of listening.
Which is fantastic. I mean, people like that. People like being listened to, being taken seriously, and like, and afterwards, hopefully, that one would do something about it, which is the important thing, because otherwise they become cynical.
Well, this is it, because there's one meeting where there were 3 communities, and they said they don't have electricity, and he has promised them by, I don't know how many months he said, but he said that they will get electricity delivered to those 3 villages, so those 3 constituencies. So that, again, is something that he's made the statement, and he's even, that one he gave a target or time frame. It will be good to see whether that is achieved.
You should be careful with promises. We don't have, you see, we have this sort of economy that depends on it. It depends on so much that's really outside of our control.
Indeed.
So you should be very careful with promises. You remember not long ago the promises on the OMBG, very soon you'll have your electricity.
By October.
Yeah.
And we're now in November.
Absolutely. These things are far more complex than you think. So obviously you can tell them, oh, it's the government's wish, it's a desire to electrify, as it were, everywhere. Really.
Of course.
So we're working hard on it or whatever, but these promises and perhaps giving dates, be careful. If you don't fulfill, this is what breeds cynicism.
This is it.
So we must be careful there.
We must be careful, Mr. President. We're talking to you, and as Mr. Mboj says, and as I'm saying, people hold on to these promises, and not only hold on to it, but they'll hold them against you if they don't deliver. So let's see what happens. Well, thank you for that. Something completely different now. We know about the Gambia's quite shocking statistics when it comes to road traffic accidents. But what about the victims? Does anybody care about them? Well, some people do. Have a look.
I've conducted community outreach programs in many schools and communities within the country in order to raise public awareness on road traffic crashes, their roles in preventing these crashes.
The slogan for this year's commemoration is to remember those who died, support those who have survived, and act for justice.
Every time I hear the word slogan, I cringe, because sometimes it is just that. It's a slogan. It's not something that we hold ourselves to or try to live up to. We heard their minister talking about schools being sensitized, being taught about. If you're out on the road, actually a lot of the parents who drive are the ones who should be taught better manners, road manners. But, you know, I wanted this featured because, again, you know, this is something that I've mentioned time and time again, the shocking statistics that the Gambia has. I won't recite them all over again. Most people know them off by heart by now. But we commemorate these days as international days. Do you see any sense of us, other than, you know, the sort of thing we just heard, schools and so on? Are we doing anything to address the menace, which is what it has become? It's an epidemic.
Absolutely, yes, we are. We are raising awareness. Have you noticed, you realize that all the time that's all we talk about, we are raising awareness, and the like. And there were times when we had equipment, road furniture,
that's right, yes,
that sort of thing.
Yes.
Oh, come on. It has to be proper public policy.
Sure.
Raise awareness, just as we said with the earlier story. It's just one plank of really a situation, a solution that requires so many different things as well. We've been saying this for such a long time. The enforcement is weak. People who can't drive, we just let them drive. So they will keep on denying it, but this is really what the problem is. You know, our government, you know, most of these officials, anytime you bring any criticism, they reflect.
They almost take
reflexively, no. Instead of confronting the message, in fact, you even begin to blame the messenger for one wrongdoing or another. So I have to be real. With the situation, then you can do something about it. But they're always defensive, trying to squeeze out any kind of argument to support their, their position. So we are not going to solve it early. Awareness is going to solve it at all. You think people are not aware?
Well, people are aware, and for me, what I liked about the day, and the reason I wanted us to bring it not just here, but on the news as well, is that it was remembrance of the victims. And we heard some of the victims speak about how the accidents they had been involved in had changed their lives. We heard people who were relatives of people who had been killed and how that had changed their lives. Sometimes it was a breadwinner. So these things have really serious consequences, and really we should get a grip of it.
Life-changing events.
Indeed.
Extraordinary.
There who had been amputated because of an accident. And how that had completely changed his life.
Extraordinary, Ade. I mean, really, when you listen to those stories, I think that's really the whole point of having these remembrance days and the like. We should be shocked into action, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Really get pissed off. I would love to see it. Maybe you just see suddenly 12, 20 CSOs all dedicated, as it were, to the traffic road safety, as it were. And in the government, the enforcement, you really want us to be shocked into action, but we don't.
And I'll tell you a shocking statistic. This is not an official statistic, but I'm saying this, if anybody denies this, I'm willing to have them ride home with me anytime they please and can come to QCell building on Kairaba Avenue. Because I knew we were going to be doing this story, I drove home yesterday around 9 o'clock from the office. And I thought, it's always been a kind of joke with me, let me count the number of cars with one light or none. Mr. Mboch, by the time I made it to my home along Coastal Road, which was a 30-minute drive, I counted 89 that either had one light or none. At 9 o'clock at night. Having said that, I didn't pass any police checkpoints, so I can't say, had they passed the checkpoint, they would have been stopped. But I've been at checkpoints where cars have been coming the other way, they've been stopped for other things, but not for the fact that they didn't have lights at night. So when we talk about the victims and we remember them on a day like this, those are the things that we should be paying attention to. And you talk about implementing and enforcing. That is not being enforced, and that's why I say we are totally unserious. And so I'm very cynical when we commemorate these days about how serious we are about cracking down.
Absolutely. In one of our programs, who was it? The police officer who came, I think he was head of traffic, the traffic unit, listing and giving us a litany of all the rules, including the fact that you cannot be on a motorbike without a helmet on. We see it all the time, and they go through checkpoints. I've personally seen that. You see it all the time. So we say one thing, but the reality is completely different. It's just quite extraordinary. And when they speak, you don't see sort of like that passion, that drive to actually want to see things differently. We've all just sort of resigned ourselves. But at bottom, that's what you see. In a way, we've all just resigned ourselves to the situation. Well, this is what we are.
This is how things are.
Exactly. And then I'm not sure whether government officials really understand what their role is, but always we are blaming people. Or if only people did the right thing.
Yes, attitudinal change.
attitudinal change and all of these things.
Sure.
Do you know the dynamics in which you bring about attitudinal change?
Sure. Well, this is it. Yeah. Yeah.
Without the institutions, you're not going to get that.
can't happen.
Unfortunately, the initiative is a curious kind of thing, but the initiative must come from the institutions.
Sure.
We know that institutions are reflections of people, but this is where great leadership comes in.
Of course, you set the agenda.
You set the agenda.
Sure.
Then people will regulate our attitudes around that.
Sure.
So, but when the institutions are such as they are, excuse me,
It's never
people
gonna
have to
happen.
survive. Huh?
Sure.
They will, people, whatever they can get away with, they will do to get away with.
This is
That's
it.
really the reality.
That is the reality. And we'd love to spend the whole program on this if it was up to me, but sadly we can't. We've got 8 other stories. And the third story, the United Secretary, Assistant Secretary General and UNDP Regional Director for Africa was here recently, Ms. Ezia Konwa. And she made quite an interesting statement or series of statements about the Gambia and its economy. Have a listen.
The economy of Gambia has to be restructured. You have so much in this country, you actually don't need aid. When you look around, the water, life on land, you don't have to depend only on tourism, but tourism is an important, has an important contribution to the economy, but it is facing many external shocks. But also Gambia imports a lot of what it needs to sustain life. So the economy has to adjust to change that.
The economy has to adjust to change that. It was quite interesting because normally when somebody in her position comes to the Gambia, they don't make statements like that. A lot of the time it's quite diplomatic stuff. They look at the projects that funded by the UN, which is what essentially, so it was quite a statement for her to make this kind of saying, you know what, I've been around your country and you could be doing a lot so much better. I was quite impressed and quite pleased.
And from that piece, what I got there, maybe I'm reading too much into it, is essentially move away from tourism.
I got that too.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because that depends on so much on external
And
events,
she
as it
mentioned
were.
external
And
events
she
and shocks.
mentioned it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And the term restructuring.
Well, indeed.
It takes a brave leader,
Yeah.
one truly with a clear vision, who
Sure.
truly understands these things,
Sure.
to do the restructuring. This is what
Yeah.
we've been trying to do.
Sure.
The reform is really at bottom, should be really
Yeah,
a
quite.
restructuring in many ways.
Yes.
But from what to what?
Well, this is it. Because, what you normally would get when somebody comes, essentially, as I said, she's looking at UN sort of projects here. She could have just gone to the projects and talked about the projects. But she knows that these projects don't happen in a vacuum. And she's saying to the government, to business, to Gambians generally, restructure your economy if you want to survive, if you want to get away from being dependent on rice from China, Thailand and everywhere else, grow your own, all of that. And really it was quite a kind of nicely done finger wagging, I thought.
Absolutely. It's just that currently the Gambia is really in a very curious situation right now. Of course, everything she said, absolutely correct. What are the correct conditions? After these 20 years, now it's been what, 5-6 years since then?
Sure.
And the current crop of government officials, in many ways, they're facing an enormous, hugely difficult task.
Sure.
I am not sure how much they can do. So far, we are seeing how they are running government, as it were. So, the restructuring, I think in the end, circumstances will force us into that. That's what's going to be. Because I do not see a leadership that has a clear grasp of how things are and a vision of where I want to go and what are my objectives. How am I going to get there? I do not get that sense. I just sort of hear the abstractions,
Yeah,
development, whatever, national development plan, and all of these abstractions, but one doesn't get that sense. And in fact, remember when Halifa Saleh said that the government appears to be just on the process of trial and error,
That's right.
as it were. So that really one gets that sense. But for what we want, the restructuring, you need a much clearer,
And something more radical.
something
than
more
what's happening here.
radical. Development is always radical.
Indeed, yes.
This is really
If
what-
you wanted to make a difference.
if you want to make a difference.
Sure.
So maybe even your own people, other people wouldn't like it because they benefit by the old ways.
This is it.
So it is extremely difficult, and that's really what he needs to do
Sure.
before he can really yield anything positive from all the policies, the organization, the human beings.
Thanks. So, President, government, business, we hope you're listening. Let us try and restructure our economy and restructure our country. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. Now, on to our fourth story. This is quite sad, tragic story. It's still a developing story pretty much, but what we do know is that a mother and her 2 children are dead. Have a look.
I and my in-laws are left without any daughters, grandchildren and nieces. I will deeply miss my family. Those were the words of Abubakar Drame, the 40-year-old husband and father who lost his family to an alleged arson attack at their house in Clifton, Nottinghamshire in the United Kingdom on Sunday. Abubakar's wife, Fatoumata Hydra, was pronounced dead on Tuesday, while the 2 children, Fatima Drame and Naima Drame, aged 3 and 1, were pronounced dead on Sunday, the day their house was said to have been set ablaze.
My colleague there, Suleiman Dabo, every time I have to talk about this, it brings emotion to me. I apologize. But if he won't mind me saying so, even my colleague there, Suleiman Dabo, when he had finished writing the story, reading all the press releases from the police and so on, and he went in to record that voice, he actually had to stop a couple of times because the emotion. Mr. Mboj, really, really shocking case.
I was gutted. I first saw it in the Guardian newspaper, and it just killed my whole spirit.
Yeah.
Looking at that woman, beautiful,
Beautiful
young,
pictures
and the
of
2
her and the
kids,
2
3
children,
and 1. I
Sure.
couldn't believe it. You know, at first I thought maybe it was an accident, and then afterwards when you heard that the possible arson attack, I said, what an awful human being. How how can you describe it?
Yeah.
I have no idea how to describe it except to hope that whoever did that faces justice.
Well, this is it. And interesting, you used the word justice there. I heard somebody, in fact, they posted in response to a similar sentiment that, you know, they should face justice. He said, even if that person goes to jail for 100 years, you're not going to bring those people back. And there have been developments, as we know. A chap called Jamie Barrow, not a Gambian Barrow, by the way, which people had suspected when it was first put out by the Nottinghamshire police, until they put out a couple of his photographs. He's a white English person who lived on the same street. And then today, just before we came into this program, I read a piece in which the husband gave a statement saying that he had secured residency for himself in America, and he'd actually secured an interview for them to go to be interviewed so they could join him, and that was fixed for next week. And he said what was even more tragic, the day in which he went to view the corpses was his birthday. He turned 40 that day. He said the worst thing possible. Sorry. It's
God, life.
I find it hard.
Extraordinary. You're right. Even when I first saw the Jamie Barrow, I said,
Yeah.
is this our Barrow?
Yeah, I thought so, because there are lots of
that
Gambians
sort of thing.
with the name Barrow, of course. Yes, same spelling. Yeah.
Absolutely. Adi, what can one say about this? I mean, you're right. Locking this person up or even killing him wouldn't bring those people back.
Right.
But again, there's something in the human heart that yearns for justice.
For justice,
Yes,
of course.
that's why
Of course,
Shayenga
whoever
called-
did this should not go scot-free.
Absolutely. Shayenga calls it justice being the first condition of humanity, isn't it?
Sure.
So we'll just follow the trial and see what happens. And people can support, or I cannot imagine what could be going through Abubakar Drame and the family. It's extraordinary situation to be in. Your wife and your kids, killed in this way, die in this way. Extraordinary. I mean, this is just one of those incidents, experiences, as it were, where sort of what's come up against the wall.
Indeed.
If you know what I mean.
Indeed.
What you really
What
don't
can you
know
say? Yeah.
what to say.
Sure.
It's just so bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, when I posted it on Facebook and Twitter, people were asking me, what do you think made somebody do it? I said, come on,
Yes.
how can I answer that question? How can anybody?
Nobody can.
You cannot. You
That's
cannot.
it. So one imagines, how on earth this sort of white English boy, what kind of relationship did he have with this woman and the kids?
Yeah, living a few doors away
A
from
few
the same
doors
street.
away. Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah, so, yeah. As you said, not much one can say. Just to say that the police have said that they have deployed 40 detectives to it, and they're treating this as the most serious case that they're dealing with currently. So we await developments. But thank you for that, Mr. Mboch. Thank you. And our condolences to the family, of course. Of course. Now on to our fifth story. It's hard to carry on after that sort of thing, but we must. In the Gambia, we're getting used to business challenges where people compete for big prizes. The next one is the Kerujula Challenge. Have a look.
We originally started with 450 applicants, and that was sieved down to 252. These 252 is divided amongst 5 different sectors, and these sectors will compete amongst themselves up to a point where 35 contestants from all cutting across all different sectors will all be put together, and they continue to compete on a final platform which will see 19 contestants.
Apologies there, it was a bit noisy, the audio there, but more than 400 initially entered. 252 was narrowed down to across 5 sectors, and then final lot will be 35 contestants battling it out, Mr. Mboch, for quite a good prize and big reward. And it's about the best business ideas. We talk about entrepreneurs and so on. Sometimes they need a boost, sometimes they need something to help them. This could be one such thing.
I think competition is healthy. I keep on saying that all the time.
Sure.
That's we should have this across the board,
Sure.
as it were. It gives young people it gives me a goal. It sort of awakens in me, as it were, the creative energies.
Indeed.
That's
Indeed.
really why I like
Sure.
competition, as it were. So it is fantastic across the country, and then you will have the right awards, rewards,
Sure.
and then, yes, and others will see what you're doing, and then they also want to do.
Well, this is
and
it.
You want to
And
outperform one another, which
this
is fantastic.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was about to say that this is going to be televised here on QTV. And when I've seen these kind of things in England and so on, you sit there and you're thinking, what? They want for that? I can do better than that. That's the kind of thing we wanted to inspire in people, to say, hey, you know, I can do even better. Yes, he's got, I don't know, 500,000 or 100,000, whatever. As a kind of, you know, seed money, whatever, to take his business to the next level, or his business idea to bring it to fruition. I can do better than that, and that's what we want.
Absolutely. And you've seen across a range of
quite.
sectors, isn't it? Creative arts, agriculture, food processing, and
so.
like. So you can imagine if other private sectors, I don't know, if other people also come along with their own competition, as it were. So you have these things all over the place.
Sure.
So it's a form of incubation, isn't it?
Well, indeed, very much so.
In many ways,
Very
it
much so.
is. So it will be fantastic, I think.
Okay, so thumbs up to Kerujula Challenge, and we wish it every success. Keep watching QTV. And now we'll go for a commercial break, and after the break, we will have 5 more stories. Don't go away.
QMoney is back again with its easy-to-use, secure and convenient mobile app that allows you to carry out all your transactions. No matter where you are or what time it is, you can always access your funds. With the new QMoney app, you can cash in and out, buy credit, buy QPower, shop, make payments, and so much more. You can also send QMoney, pay bills, receive international remittances, and transfer cash to others. Just download the app from your Play Store or App Store and get started. For more information, call customer care on 133. QMoney, Sinu Kalpe. We innovate, others follow.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ade Darami, and I've here, colleague and friend, Mr. Mboj, presenting with me. Mr. Mboj, as ever, thank you for your interjections in the first half of the program.
Cheers, Adi.
And again, I say to the viewers, if you missed the first half, you missed some cracking stories, but we've got 5 cracking stories still to go. Now, if you lived in Western Europe and you read about West Africa, you probably avoid the region totally. Why? Well, all you read about are coups d'etats, jihadist attacks, and worse. And some people are trying to get together to cooperate to do something about it. Have a look.
In transnational organized crimes in recent times is leading to the existence of sophisticated networks and cooperation between terror and criminal groups.
According to Global Terrorism Index 2022, Sub-Saharan Africa has so far accounted for 48% of global terrorism deaths.
Our region is indeed experiencing volatilities of a complex nature, which require enhanced coordination based on well-thought-out strategies to be addressed.
Now, I hope that statistic scared you. 48% of global terrorism deaths, not attributable to Africa, but to West Africa, Mr. Mboj. That was why we had this Committee of Intelligence and Security Services of Africa conference here in Gambia, where people came to share ideas, to collaborate and cooperate in tackling really, really shocking statistics.
Security experts have been warning us for a long time.
Sure.
From Libya, all the arms, as it were
Libya,
just coming
Chad,
down,
through
Chad,
down,
going down here. Absolutely, and this is scary. It's scary because in these African countries, you do not have, in some of these West African countries, internal stability.
Sure.
These things really work once you have internal stability. That's when they can work. So coming together, trying to coordinate efforts, we really have no choice for our collective survival.
This is it.
Mali is very worrying. Can you imagine if these insurgents, the terrorists sort of have a stronghold in Mali, then the likelihood of it spreading all over the place is really very high, huge. So absolutely, we need these things, but that also not simply words as well. How do we implement? How do we actualize all of these things that we are saying, particularly put against the backdrop of the internal instability?
Well, this is
of
it.
Some of these countries.
Some of these countries are having their own coups d'etats, and some of them are being sanctioned by ECOWAS. And these are the same countries you want to cooperate with each other. And of course, what they're saying and what they said at this conference is that we do need to cooperate with each other for the very reason you've given. If Mali gets into the wrong hands, let's put it that way, then it will just spread out like a bad disease and just infect everywhere in the West African sub-region.
Absolutely. And I also realized that apparently this body was formed in 2004.
Yes.
Then I wonder, what effect has it had?
What have they done?
What have they done? Because things don't appear to be getting better, as it were. Just as the gentleman there said, it's a very complex situation.
Sure.
So it takes more than words.
It does, and if I give them their due, and I wish we had a 1 hour or 2 hour program just from the conference, because you had several speakers, and what they were saying in the plainest words possible is that we've talked and talked at these conferences, but we have not cooperated in the way of sharing information in the way that we need to do, that we should have done, and there is an existential threat to us. If we do not, our countries will be blown out of existence if we don't. And that was the warning that came from several of them, to say, look, the talking has to stop. What are we going to do about cooperating in a practical way?
Yes, there's probably mutual suspicion of each other.
This is it.
You see, this is all stemming from that internal instability. Without that, that's the basic unit, isn't it? That will form this cooperation. But without that, it will be very difficult. And perhaps some of these leaders, they'll be more worried about their political survival.
And that again came through, that, you know, for some of them, that is the biggest fear they have, rather than saying, you know, if I am destabilized, my neighbor will be destabilized. Like, you know, how do I hold on to power? And that was their primary concern.
That's it. So these internal weaknesses, that's our biggest enemy.
That's it.
That's for me, that's the biggest threat. Not necessarily the terrorists, really. Because if we could come together, I think that we can really defend ourselves, if you know what I mean. But these internal divisions, as it were, perhaps mutual suspicion or wrong priorities, you are there for your own, you know, survival, then we might be overrun at some point.
It could well happen. And just to say in closing, they talked about sharing things like technology. Those countries that have satellite technology, you have the Sahara Desert, which you cannot police. You cannot police the Sahara Desert border. But if you have satellite technology and you're aware of large groups of men under arms, tell the country that is a threat that we've spotted this, be on the alert. Those sorts of things. So lots more, but we have lots more stories to go through, but just something to think about. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And now on to something that hasn't quite happened yet, but everybody's getting quite excited about the possibility of it happening. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the health benefits package that is soon to hit the Gambia in a good way. People have been planning for it to make sure that when it comes, we get it right. Have a look.
Looking at cost effectiveness in terms of value for money. So what are the services, the key services that we need to put in place that provide value for money, that when we invest we get a good benefit, and of course providing financial risk protection, ensuring that our population is not going into poverty because they want to access healthcare services.
Mr. Mboj, what I like about this is that it's the kind of thing that you need to work out your priorities before you launch it. And that's kind of what they're trying to do. And I smiled there when he mentioned value for money, because there was a time when I worked in the British civil service, I beg your pardon, I was a civil servant, and we had our managers, they'd go to meetings and they'd come back, right, now we must talk about VFM. And I kind of cringed and smiled, but at the same time there's a serious element to it. They're trying to work out that when it's finally launched, people are aware that there are certain things that we won't be able to get from this health insurance package, so don't expect too much.
Absolutely, but Ade, when you said that, of course these are some of the details that you need to work out before, then I said, oh thank God I'm not mad. Yeah. I thought I was going crazy when I heard them saying that it's only now that they're working out these details. Ade, this is my suspicion. I've never worked in government, but if I want to introduce a health insurance scheme, I will do the feasibility study. Yep. Where can we bring in our interventions, as it were, get the details done, then you announce. Then you can answer questions about this, that, or the other. But you've announced first, and then perhaps went back to the people and say, put in the details. I hope it is not like that with the 150,000 jobs in 5 years. Have you worked out where, how, you know, what it will take to get that? So I'm really intrigued by this reversal of you know, it's almost like putting the cart.
Because when it was announced, you and I, we were a bit worried, like, oh, you know, this is coming. We don't remember any survey being done about it. We don't remember any announcement about feasibility studies, and yet it's been announced almost as a fait accompli.
Absolutely, the funding, there's just so much to go into
because
these things.
If you go through all this and you find that it's unworkable, what do? Do you drop it?
Do you drop it?
You've raised expectations. You know, scary.
Yes, but at least they're going through the right details.
Sure.
Then we'll see what we'll get at the end of it.
Yes, let's hope for the best. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. Now on to story number 8. Again, to do with health. Kanifing General Hospital recently received 3 ambulances. But not just any 3 ambulances. There's quite a story behind them. Here's some of that story. Have a look.
After a weeks-long journey by land from the Netherlands across the Sahara Desert, the Stitching Semen Vo Gambia Foundation arrived in the Gambia with the life-saving vehicles and equipment. The items include incubators, scanning machines, ultrasound machines, gloves, among other valuables. Martin Zestra, the chairperson of the Stitching Semen Vo Gambia, explains how his foundation gathered the funds from the Netherlands to the Gambia to support Gambian healthcare system.
In this period, in these months we prepared this trip, we almost collected 6 million dalasi. 6 million dalasi to complete this project is 100,000 euros. So we had to do a lot of things for it. We had to do a lot of things. We built parties that people came and donate money. We took music evenings. We collected money by companies. We almost had meetings 2 times a week beside our jobs to create this project. We grow as one group together. And then we started 2.5 weeks ago. We started this trip with 3 brand new ambulances.
As he said there, Dutch gentleman, his English is not perfect. He said 3. Essentially, he meant 3 brand new ambulances, and that's what I mean. Our colleagues who went were quite impressed. They looked at them. They weren't reconditioned. They weren't second-hand. These were brand new ambulances. And one of the reasons we talked about other matters in this segment, you know, in this particular program, about setting an example that others might want to emulate. And I hoped by showing this that Gambians actually in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia, might say, oh, those folks did it. 3 ambulances, 100,000 euros. Can we do the same? Can we?
He's just giving us a lesson there in resource mobilization.
Indeed, they did parties,
parties,
music evenings,
absolutely.
You name it. They had meetings twice a week, apart from their jobs, to make this happen for a country that some of them had visited, some of them had never visited, and yet they'd been inspired to try and help.
Absolutely, and I understand that with this company, this organization, they've been doing other things in this country for a long time.
That's right.
In the past.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. See, what I picked from there, and I once got from a UNDP official here, sort of you want to mobilize resources, especially with these groups that go around asking for donation. Why not make it an activity-based?
Sure.
That's it.
Well,
that's it. Like, I love that idea. Yeah. Perhaps decide to choose a particular locale and say we're going to clean it. You want, contributions, but you're doing something positive. You're working. Sure. You just don't go around. When I see these young people going around, donation this, donation that, I'm like, look at me. I'm an old man. I have to go to work. It doesn't work like that. So work, do something.
Yes.
Then people will come and donate. Sure. Even decide to, paint zebra crossing around schools. Yeah. You see, stuff like that. Do something, then people will come and donate. Then maybe you can, have lots of money and be more useful. Fantastic idea there.
Wonderful
idea.
idea.
We just hope that we take care of it.
I was going to come to that.
You have to say
because
that.
I got a sense that, yes, they deliver them to us. Are we going to maintain them in the proper way? Do we have engineers, mechanics who know how to look after those particular, not just the ambulances, but the equipment on board the ambulances?
That's it. We need to train anybody to be able to handle these things. Sure. That's the longevity that has been really our Achilles heel. We must really work on that. Service them properly, so that it will serve
well, this is it. And perhaps that could be our contribution as Gambians to say, okay, we will pay for the training for people who can service the equipment and these vehicles. Who knows? That could be one thing.
In these donors, when they see that you're putting to good use what they're giving you, that's an incentive for perhaps others to come in or for them to do more. When they realize that you've been appreciative, and the only way you can show your appreciation is by putting them to good use. No need just talking about it. Appreciation is in the action, really. Then perhaps that might draw in others to help in the life.
We hope so. But congratulations to those folks. Stichting voor Samen Gambia from the Netherlands. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our penultimate story, story number 9. The Minister of Gender, Children and Social Welfare, and also the UN representative spoke about Activism Day against sexual and gender-based violence. Have a look.
We will therefore commit to continue to work tirelessly to promote a sexual and gender-based violence-free Gambia in all aspects, to be it in the private or public domain. As a result, we call on the support of all stakeholders, including civil society, organizations, and the UN system in the Gambia, as crucial partners in the fight against sexual and gender-based violence.
Mr. Mboj, when we were doing this, we had some pictures that were too horrible to use in the story, essentially mainly of men beating women, captured on camera and so on. In the end, I told them to take them out. 16 days of activism started on the 25th of November, ends on 10th of December. We need much more than that, don't we? It's a societal problem that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Just to adapt here what Alice Walker once said, to make 16 days of activism matter, it takes every day. that sort of thing.
And that nails it, really.
Absolutely. So this is it here. This is also one of those complex social issues, sure, as well. So this is where, yes, we must talk more. Do we have counseling services? Yeah. I don't know whether we have.
There's a whole network.
Yes.
You know, the minister there, Fatou Kinte, talked about wanting a SGB-free Gambia. You know, unless we put in place certain things where people can go, either safe houses or whether it's counseling, you know, marriage counseling. I've never heard of anybody, apart from going to friends and family and, you know, others for counseling. I've not heard of any other type of structured counseling where couples can go for couples counseling. Those sorts of things need to happen. And we don't have that. So we can say 16 days of activism, but every day has to matter. On any given day, a woman, because it's mainly women who are at the brunt of it, who wants to escape from an abusive partner, husband or fiancé or whatever, needs to be able to go to a safe house.
There must be
that sort of thing.
Yes, the enabling condition. So for people to behave in a certain way, you gotta have the enabling, as it were, conditions. I'm not here preaching any kind of environmental determinism, but you know what I mean. There must be that. So this is it. When you're facing some of these cultural issues, how do you approach them?
Yeah, quite. You know,
sort of this sort of almost Western style. 16 days of activism.
You know,
I am not sure. It's probably having effect, but it's bound to be extremely slow.
Sure,
I'm not even sure what effect it is having, because I suspect that most of our efforts regarding social change and stuff, I'm not sure how well it's working. When I talk to younger people here, oh my God, they are so conservative. It makes me sound like a radical, that sort of thing. When I think I'm the most conservative person I know. But these young fogies, we used to call them, that's it. So I'm not sure what was going on in terms of this sort of social evolution, you know, assimilating some of these concepts, being gender sensitive and all the rest of it. I'm really not sure.
And you know, when you meet people who are supposedly educated, Western educated, and so on, they come here and they strike their wife or their partner, and people try and stop them, and you're thinking, you know, we've got a long way to go.
So somebody was quoting for me, I couldn't believe it, in the Quran. What was it? I can't even remember what he said. That you are given the right to hit your wife. So you have some of these beliefs that are really quite pernicious stuff. So that's really what you need to tackle.
Well, this is it.
How do you tackle these beliefs? How do you engage with them in a society where we have come to sort of regard what we call our culture almost like a fetish? There is no critical. We elevate it to that level, which is unhealthy, as it were. So it appears to me that we do not have that critical engagement, as it were, with the culture that we share for the sake of the future.
Yeah, and this is it, and that is what we need. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboja. And that brings us to our final story, story number 10. Again, another one of those days commemorated, World Children's Day. And some children had some very interesting things to say, or one in particular. Have a listen.
Parents should allow us to do our own choice, because they are not the one who are sitting inside the classrooms doing the syllabus or the subjects that we are doing in the classrooms. So we as students, we should be the one who should decide our future or our future careers. And parents should at least support us and encourage us more, even though they don't want us to be this, but at least they should see the potential in us that we want to be this. And like one of the speakers said, that if you want to achieve something, have it in mind.
If you want to achieve something, have it in mind. That young man's voice had everybody sit up and say, "Is that a school child?" Jaite, his surname. And he was speaking there to our colleague Jennifer Sonko. But he made some valid points there, including the thing about if we want to do this, it might not be what our parents want to do, but they should listen to us about why we want to do this. And that's the kind of thing that happens all too rarely, surely, Mr. Mboja.
Yes, when I was at KYT, Quantum Institute of Technology, I used to have students come in through my office to complain.
Right.
They want to do one thing, but the parents would want them to do
something
else.
Sure.
Yes, so you get that a lot of the time. And parents sort of need to wise up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? We all have strengths, inclinations.
This is it.
Because when you give career counseling, this is what you tell the students. You got to know yourself and see really where you have your passion, as it were.
Sure.
You try to get a career around it, so that you could even excel in it.
This is
you know what I mean? Because you'll be doing it for the rest of your life, possibly. So you better like what you do.
And the reason it resonated with me, what that young man had to say, is that for myself and my siblings and my cousins, my first cousins, it was a nightmare. For example, my father is a lawyer. My mother's two sisters were married to lawyers. And then we had cousins who were lawyers. So it's like they expected all of us to be lawyers. And the pressure was ridiculous. And it wasn't what we wanted to do. But they thought that this is the kind of the family thing. You must go into this. And so they weren't even hearing what we should say. Having said that, I mean, up to this day, I thank my parents that they stopped me from being a professional footballer, which is what I wanted to do. And I mentioned this on the This Morning program. My mother, who was a nurse, said, "How can you be a professional footballer when, every season you play, you miss half the season with injury? Imagine if that was your job." And that kind of made me sit up and start to do other things. But essentially, really, we're getting at, World Children's Day. We don't have much more to go. But about listening to children and discussing with them. Don't sort of talk down to your children.
That is precisely the key. If I want to teach my child to reason, then I reason with him or her. You just cannot sort of lay the law. Think about it. I said, if I want to awaken your critical faculties, the only way you can do it is by reasoning with them. Those children will go on, they'll do better in school. See, there's something we used to call anyway, cultural capital. That's why some people do much better than others in class, in many ways. So that's it. You're talking to them, listen to them. If you want them to respect themselves, this is key. I have to listen to them, then they'll have self-respect. You have to build it into them. When they are kids, self-confidence is the most important thing. Do you think that the smartest people are running the world? No, possibly the most self-confident are running the world. And that's how the parents can help build the self-confidence of children.
Absolutely brilliant, and totally agree with all of that. And it's the one thing that I thank my parents for, that they always spoke to us as reasonable people, even when we were very, very young. They didn't talk down to us or treat us like, "I'm not listening to you." they listen to us.
And the kids are information processing machines extraordinaire.
Yeah, quite.
You know what I mean? They are looking, they're absorbing so much. The brain is working so fast. So some of us might think that, oh, they are kids that don't know anything. I'm like, you don't know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with the most dangerous brain.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant point to end on. And so please, if you're watching this and you are a parent and you have children, listen to your children. Mr. Mboji, as ever, thank you for your interjections.
Yeah.
And as ever, to the viewers, thank you for watching. Until the next time, goodbye.